Welcome to the America 250 PA Start Here, America Did podcast, telling the unique stories that make up the diverse fabric of Pennsylvania.
Welcome to another installment of Start Here, America Did podcast. I'm your host, Sydney Harris, and today we're celebrating a special milestone, our 30th episode. How incredible is that? And speaking of celebrations, as we dive into December, I hope you're feeling the holiday spirit, no matter how you observe the season. Here in Pennsylvania, the holiday season is nothing short of magical. From the charming Christkindl Market in the Lehigh Valley to the enchanting Christmas Village and the vibrant Chevres Festival of Light, both in Philadelphia, to the cozy downtown markets in Lancaster and Pittsburgh, and the dazzling holiday light extravaganza in the Laurel Highlands, festive cheer is truly around every corner. And that's just scratching the surface. Today, we're focusing on one of Pennsylvania's most unique and fiery traditions, the Phoenixville Firebird Festival. While many of us think of the holidays as a time of lights and cozy gatherings, this event takes things to a whole new level, celebrating renewal, community, and creativity with a massive wooden phoenix set ablaze. It is an unforgettable experience that happens every December, drawing crowds from near and far. This year's festival takes place on December 14th, and we're diving into the story behind it in today's episode. Here to tell us more about the Phoenixville Firebird Festival is Marianne Calilhanna, a volunteer with the Firebird Festival Committee. Marianne, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me.
For our listeners who may not be familiar, can you tell us about the Phoenixville Firebird Festival?
I am thrilled to tell you about the Firebird Festival. So, Phoenixville, Pennsylvania is located in Chester County. We are a small town, and our Firebird Festival is named after our namesake, the Phoenix. And the festival celebrates art, our culture, and the ephemeral nature of life and rebirth.
So what inspired its creation, and what are the legends or myths behind the Firebird?
There's a couple things going on. So first off, in Greek mythology, the phoenix is this mythical bird. It's well known for its ability to be reborn from its ashes, and that symbolizes immortality and renewal. And it's depicted as this beautiful, majestic creature with brightly colored feathers and a long tail. And Phoenixville, Pennsylvania experienced an economic downturn in the late 80s, in 1987. We had the Phoenix Steel Corporation, which was a huge facility where steel was produced. It was shipped all around the country. But the Steel Corporation closed in 1987 for good. And that facility employed thousands of people in our community. And as a result of that closure, we had a very serious economic collapse. A depression hit the town. Then, starting in the mid to late 90s, we also are fortunate to have a very historic and famous theater called the Colonial Theater. For any movie buffs out there who are familiar with the movie The Blob, the 1950s movie, it was Steve McQueen's first movie, that was filmed in our area. And there's a very famous scene where people run out of the Colonial Theater to escape this extraterrestrial monster that came down. And the Colonial Theater is well known for its architecture as well as this backdrop for this movie. And that theater started a renaissance. They redid the theater, they reopened it, they started showing films. And then around 2004, there was a collective of local artists who were inspired by what was going on at the theater and wanted to kind of extend into the town. So they formed a committee called the Arts and Entertainment Committee in Phoenixville, and they're really important for the Firebird history. It was a small group comprising Lynn Miller, Charles Seagull, Lisa Muller, Mary Foote, Kathy Bestwick, and Henrik Stube Tegleberg. Henrik comes from Denmark. So this group really wanted to kind of bring something together that could be celebrated and represent this rebirth that was starting to happen. And what better way than to kind of, jump on our namesake, the Phoenix, and they came up with this wild idea to build a wooden structure and then burn it right in the center of town. Now, in 2004, the Firebird Festival did not look like what it looks like today. It was built in a day. It was maybe 4 to 6 feet tall, and just a few people kind of came out and watched the burning. So that's in short the beginning of the advent of this festival.
And speaking of that Firebird, over the years, the festival has developed some pretty unique traditions. Could you tell us about a few of these traditions that make the celebration so unique?
Absolutely. We have many, and each year, organically, new ones sort of sprout up. So first and foremost, that it's a community build. Starting in September, people from our town or elsewhere, all are really welcome, come together and start building the structure. And that means we're donated wood, we're donated pallets, and we have to break them apart and pull out the nails. It's labor intense. So that community build coming together is something that has been maintained throughout our history. Another beautiful tradition that we had for many years was a local art studio would host baby claybird workshops. So you could take a class and you would craft out of clay a baby bird, a phoenix. And then all of those would go into a special box that we designed that would go inside the giant wooden structure. And through the firing of the Firebird, as well as keeping the fire going all night long, we would burn these clay birds. And in the morning, out of the ashes, when we were raking up the ashes, these baby birds would appear. So, it was a beautiful representation, a visual representation of this myth. There's some restrictions these days because the festival has grown, because the structure has grown, that we are unable to keep that fire going all night long. But then a local art studio, Studio 323 in our main street on Phoenixville, has sort of brought in a new tradition where they host classes to make these baby birds, and rather than firing them in the main structure, we fire them in a proper kiln, but we glaze them with a concoction that a potter glaze that incorporates the ashes from the previous year. So we still have that, that connection to years past and this visual representation of the rebirth of the phoenixes. There's other little things like, because the builders and the community is working so hard on Saturdays and Sunday building this, we have a sign-up sheet for people to feed the builders. And it's just so lovely that every Saturday around noon or 12:30, everybody stops, we come together, and we all share a communal meal that's been donated, which is it's truly so lovely. And each year there's this spontaneous art that's been coming up. So one year on the walls of the Phoenix, people just started to put up boards or things that they harvested from the woods to make really neat art installations. And this year, some of the spontaneous art that's been created of people have been making baby birds. So it really fits with the design of this year. And we're going to have this massive phoenix coming in for a landing in her nest. And then all these baby birds will be in or outside the nest. So there's always something that just kind of magical happens every year.
And I want to talk a little bit more about the magic of the Firebird Festival. And with that magic is the art and the cultural life of Phoenixville. So one of the festival's mission is to support this art and cultural life within the town. How does the Firebird Festival highlight and celebrate the town's creative and cultural spirit on a deeper level?
Phoenixville is truly a community where we make sure that people feel safe, celebrated, and loved, no matter their background. We have a wide range of socioeconomic backgrounds of people in our community. And when we come together for the Firebird, we come together to celebrate this town and this creative spirit. At the festival itself, we have a really large festival village, and that's where our local artisans and crafters have a table set up and they sell their wares. Throughout the year, local businesses come to us and ask, how can we get involved? How can we support you? So I mentioned one of the pottery studios in town is hosting the baby bird, the clay bird workshop. We have a brewery in town who is crafting their own Rise from the Ashes beer. And what's also beautiful is that those business endeavors recognize that this is a very grassroots initiative that still needs real capital to get going. So they do some profit sharing with us to help us produce the festival. While the build is being creative, there are poetry readings. One of our local poets comes usually around dusk and puts out rugs and chairs, and they host readings or a time that people can come together and just talk. We have other artists in town that donate items for our fundraising efforts. So it's really just a beautiful thing where people kind of come to us with what they've created and, gift it from their heart and help us support this, make this festival happen.
So every year, thousands of people attend the Firebird Festival. And this is people outside of Phoenixville as well. What do you think draws such a large crowd? How does the festival create a positive impact on both the Phoenixville community and the neighboring areas?
I think there's a few things for that. I think on this local level, the festival is used as a marker among our people to come together at a time for an event that is not like a holiday that might have a religious connotation or national significance. This festival is unique to Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. And when we come together at the end of the year, I think a lot of people really do use it as a marker to take stock and reflect. We burn off, we let go of things that no longer serve us. In our local group, we have a saying that we always say is free the form to new spaces. That's sort of our mantra, that when you burn something off, when you let go and release, you're opening to something new. And at a time of year when it's so dark and you have this fire, it's very symbolic that you can find that spark, you can find a light in the darkest of times, and people can apply their own meaning to that. And then for people who come from outside, I think there's also just that primal appeal of fire. This event takes place in a huge field. It's a very dark sky. Embers are floating up and dissipating into the darkness. And it's really a profound visual metaphor. So I think that's that's what drives people and makes people want to come.
And just to let the audience know, and I don't think I mistakenly didn't mention this earlier, but this is a 20-foot structure on fire, creates just this massive bright area. Is that correct?
Yes.
It lights up the night, literally. So moving forward, as a volunteer of the festival, I'm sure you have had your fair share of stories to tell. Can you tell us your favorite memory from a past festival?
It's hard to pick one, but one year was very moving. And sometimes I still have trouble talking about it because I get a bit emotional. In 2014, I woke up really early to a phone call, and someone shared that the bird had been torched the night before. So we experienced an act of arson, and the structure that everyone had been working on for 3 months was burned to the ground. We had already loaded the clay birds in at that time. We were doing the clay birds. So it was just a real tragedy. Well, word spread so quickly among our community about the arson that I've never seen so many people come out so quickly, donating everything, their time to rebuild sort of a makeshift bird, because we had to keep that fire going for the clay bird. So that was happening. People were planning on coming to this festival. We didn't want to let the festival not take place because of a violent act. Everyone came out with something, and I was there trying to help, direct people with whatever they were giving, donating coffee and food for the builders and wood to do this makeshift build. And these two young girls came up, and they said, we don't really have anything to give, but we've collected these sticks and we thought you could use that. And it just moved me to tears that people gave from their heart whatever they could find. And just picking up a stick was an act of contribution and kindness and compassion. So that was sort of my favorite festival. It was 2014.
I can imagine. That's amazing. And I think that just shows how much this bird and this festival means to your community, and how many people it really resonates with. And I think that's something powerful and unique to Phoenixville and to Pennsylvania as a whole.
Yeah, it was a real Grinch Whoville moment. I mean, you couldn't have scripted it any better if you were writing a story.
So I have to ask, what came of this 2014 bird? Were you able to create something similar? Were you able to create a structure that you could still lit a flame?
It wasn't similar, because the bird that year was absolutely magical. But we built a makeshift bird in one day, and we burned it, and the crowd just went wild knowing the history and what happened the night before.
Oh, I'm sure that made everybody's holiday season. Just moving on to this year, and thank you so much for telling that. I loved hearing that. I just want to know if there's anything particularly unique or exciting about this year's festival that attendees and maybe even our listeners can look forward to.
This year, the design is really wild. It's a phoenix that is coming in for a landing into its nest. It's coming in to protect its babies. And again, these babies were spontaneously built. They weren't part of the design. And it's going to be a phoenix in flight. In years past, all of our Firebirds have been sometimes an abstract representation of a phoenix, or sometimes, a more traditional representation, but it's always been a phoenix sort of sitting on the ground. This year, it's going to be coming in for a landing into its nest. So that requires a number of structural attention to build that, construct that. We do take safety very seriously, and there's we had a lot of builders and master builders involved, architect this, and it's just gonna It's going to look really wild and different than years past. And throughout the build and even the day of the festival, we really encourage people to come by. You can touch it. You can feel the structure. You can take pictures around it. So that's going to be the really neat thing about this year.
I cannot wait to see it. I am making an effort to come this year. This is my, I'd say, second year living on the east side of the state. It would be a short travel for me to come this year. So I'm super excited to be there and to see this new bird.
And we even have a local hotel reached out and gave us a special Firebird discount for people who want to come from out of town. That's the kind of generosity this festival instills in our local businesses too.
Oh, I hope all of our listeners heard that if they are out of town or in the west side of the state, like I was for a big portion of my life, you can travel at a pretty discounted rate. So that's phenomenal. Mm-hmm. So to end our conversation today, I do just want to touch that if our listeners would like to learn more about the Phoenixville Firebird Festival or even participate in it, how could they do so?
Go to firebirdfestival.com. There's a link in the main navigation called Contact. You can fill out a form and get on our email list. We send out regular email correspondence with any new information like fundraisers that we have throughout the year. And at the bottom of every page on our website are links to our social channels. We have an active Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube channel.
Phenomenal. So thank you so much, Marianne. That's all I have for you today, but we really enjoyed listening to your insights and your wonderful story about the 2014 Firebird. So again, just thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for reaching out. I'm so happy, and you're most welcome.
Oh, I can't wait to be there. The Phoenixville Firebird Festival is truly a one-of-a-kind event, showcasing the creativity and strong sense of community that makes Phoenixville so very special. For our listeners, if you haven't experienced the Firebird Festival yet, be sure to mark your calendars for December 14th. It's a holiday event unlike any other, and you won't want to miss it. As we wrap up, I want to thank you all for tuning into our 30th episode of our podcast. This journey has been incredible, and it wouldn't have been possible without your support. Stay connected with us as we continue to share the stories that celebrate Pennsylvania's rich history, cultures, and traditions. And be sure to join us for our next episode, where we'll explore the legendary story of Washington's Crossing and the annual reenactment that takes place every December 25th. Until next time, I'm Sydney Harris. Take care, be kind to one another, and we'll see you for our next episode. Stay PA proud.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cassandra Coleman, Executive Director of America 250 PA. Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. We encourage you to learn more about America 250 PA and send us your podcast ideas at america250pa.org.
This has been the America 250 PA Start Here, America Did podcast, produced by Commonwealth Media Services. Stay tuned for more epic Pennsylvania stories at america250pa.org.